Craft Beer Podcast. I'm Steven Shomler, your host. Man, I am so excited. This podcast is a long time coming. Michael Hunsaker, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Very good. So, man, I'm just excited. You were one of the early first podcasts, episode 14, one that I've been promising a long time, Camas Slider Culmination. I just released his episode 125.
Really?
So I keep running into you.
We've been talking about this for a long time.
We have, yeah, and every time I feel bad, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't let him see me. I'm an idiot.
It is what it is.
So glad to get here, though. So, Grains of Wrath. Lots happened in your journey and my journey since we did your podcast.
Quite a bit.
I'll put links to it below so people can listen to that because it has got a really fun content. We'll review a few things, but maybe we're going to pick up from where that one left off.
Sure.
It's kind of funny. I tell people that in all sincerity, I know that I just listened to our last podcast, today to freshen myself up on your story, and I know that you've got some sincere, kind of like Camas actually, a lot of similarities, some sincere modesty. You're just not braggadocious at all. But I tell people all the time that you are one of the best IPA brewers I've ever met.
Oh, well, thank you.
And you and I had a conversation. I was not as clueful about the beer industry as I am now. Not that I'm any wizard now, but we had a conversation when we recorded your first podcast about, Brewmaster. And you're like, I hesitate to take that title.
Yeah, no, I agree. I still agree with that.
I understand. And I helped Camas first year and a half with Culmination. And I always, I wanted to celebrate him as a brewmaster. And he's like, hey, Steven, don't do that. And I didn't quite understand. But since then, I've met some brewers that are like, I've been brewing professionally for 5 years and I'm the brewmaster. And it's like, wait a minute, what? And how long did you homebrew? Oh, no homebrewing. You've been a brewer for 5 years total in your life and you think you're a brewmaster. So I've learned to really appreciate that.
A long way to go.
Yeah, there's some, in our first podcast, we agreed, you kind of pushed back and I didn't quite understand why. And, there's some we agree, Ben Edmonds, brewmaster, Josh Ream, brewmaster. Yep, we could name a few, but, in my heart, having enjoyed your beers, there are a few people like Camas and like you who do earn the title, but I have a much better understanding of and respect for your kind of hesitation to put that aside.
Thanks.
But you're the head brewer.
I'm the head brewer.
And owner, Grains of Wrath.
Yep.
Could almost call this podcast Dreams Come True, which is just amazing to me.
It is.
That we're sitting in your brewery, particularly, which we'll get to, how we met the first conversation we ever had in our lives.
That's right.
But way I begin all my podcasts, where were you born?
I was born in southwestern Illinois, in Quincy, Illinois, right on the Mississippi River.
And where'd you go to high school?
Right after I was born, my parents moved up. We were up in the Chicago suburbs. So high school kind of got split. My first year was my freshman year was in Elgin, and then my dad moved us down to Houston for his job. So I spent my sophomore and junior year going to Klein High School in Spring, Texas, and then moved back up my senior year, which was always a lot of fun to move right before your senior year. I moved to Lake Zurich, Illinois. And
what high school did you graduate from?
I graduated from Lake Zurich.
And what was the mascot there? Do you remember?
The Bears.
The Bears. Oh, I like that.
Yeah, well, I'm a Chicago Bears fan, so it kind of fits. It's easy to remember.
It just makes me laugh. I know you're a Chicago Bears fan. You love the Bears, and we talked about their struggles on my last podcast.
Still struggling. It's real.
And we also, which we'll get to in a second, you were there. You were in Cleveland for a while, and we talked about the Browns.
Yep.
What a mind-blowing turnaround, the Browns.
Oh, it's great because those fans, they're the most diehard fans I've ever met of anything. Because, it's easy to be a fan when you're winning, but when you get stomped every year, and it's just, you find ways to lose games that the teams do, and those fans stayed true to it. So I got huge respect for them. So, and plus, on my right hand, Owen Lamb here he's from Cleveland, so he's a big, Browns fan. So we watched the Bears and the Browns playoff games, and we got to watch two of his.
Hey, someday the Bears will come back. It's fun.
We'll see.
My son does Strong Opinion Sports. He's doing really well. At this point, he's got, 162,000 subscribers now on his YouTube channel. And when he talks about certain sports teams, I think about, when he ever talks about the Detroit Lions, my heart aches for Camas at Culmination. He talks about the Bears, my head goes to you. That's how I connect about sports, is people I care about. I want those teams to do well because of them. So in Chicago, you like the Bears.
Yep.
So for those that don't know, because people are asking, growing up in Chicago, I already know, but for those that don't know, Cubs. Okay, Cubs. Cubs.
Cubs. It's the only thing. Yeah. I'm not much of a basketball fan, but I'm a huge hockey fan. So Blackhawks, Bears, and Cubs, kind of in that order.
And we'll get to a fun part of your craft beer journey in just a second. But before you got into craft beer, where did your beer journey begin? Just with any old beer?
Oh, I think stealing beer at the family parties. Drinking old style. Going to all the family parties and it's just full of it doesn't really craft beer like in the late 70s, early 80s, not in Chicago at least. So drinking that was kind of my first, and it's hence the reason I make the homage beer now called Dive Bar, because it's that beer that you drank when you were younger. It's just easy. It's benign.
I'm by choice. I'm drinking a Dive Bar lager right now. I love that beer.
Yeah, and I like it. It's made with better ingredients. It's easy drinking. It's a good beer.
But you started off with old style because that's what your family drank back in the day.
For sure.
All right.
100%. And then when I got older, people started introducing me to other things, and then it was like Samuel Smith's Tatty Brown or Tatty Porter, and a few others like that. That kind of the darker beers went on and. And then, but I'll say this: the beer that opened my eyes to everything, and is my island beer, is Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. I will genuflect to that beer at all times. That is, and it's like my calibration beer. A lot of times if you go to you go to these festivals and everything's just off the hook, and then you want to just kind of bring your palate back to zero. That kind of does that for me.
I like it. That's good.
Yeah.
So another fun. We'll stay on the beer in Chicago. Another Chicago area brewery that you came to love.
Three Floyds.
There you go. So 100%. Talk to me about for those who don't know. Kind of tell them, clue them in what because I think why we are sitting right here in Grains of Wrath and how it feels and how it is has a lot to do with Three Floyds.
100%. I mean, that was the most influential as far as just a brewery with just the kind of attitude, what they do, and make phenomenal beer on top of it. You have just like they're kind of a metal brewery. They're just outside Chicago. They're actually in Indiana, but it's like exit 1, so it's basically a Chicago suburb. They're in Munster, and that was been my second. Statement after that was after Sierra Nevada. It was actually kind of like Alpha King. Their pale ale is kind of like really just kind of set me on my hop journey as to this is something completely different.
And talk to us about Alpha King.
Alpha King. So it's a pale ale. I mean, really, it was back then when I first had it, it's basically an IPA. That's what it was. They called it a pale ale, I think. And all their beers, but everything they did is kind of like this. Everything they had back then was kind of even had a nice hop expression. Their Gumball had their wheat ale, which is Amarillo hops. They had a bunch. They had that Dreadnought was their double IPA at the time, and it was changed to Arctic Panzer Wolf and a bunch of other stuff. I mean, they've exploded.
Yeah, so. I think it's hilarious. When we did our first podcast, episode 14, you talked about, man, you love Three Floyds. Yeah. They're a metal bar. Neither one of us had any idea, at least I didn't, that down the road would be Grains of Wrath, a metal brewery. I mean,
yeah, I think that my idea was always, if I was going to open one, is to have some kind of some edge to it. Don't be straight down the fairway. Yeah. Lean the way you want to lean and be who you are, and I think the brewery side of that does that. So,
and I think that's been kind of your path for a long time. Even though people wouldn't believe it, you, like me, have had 10 plus years roughly in the corporate world.
Yeah.
Wearing a suit and tie. I had 10 plus years in corporate banking wearing a suit and tie.
That noose around your neck. It's terrible.
No, it was weird. I love wearing a tie. But for you, and although I did burn out and left, and you realized at one point in your journey, you just weren't fulfilled. You bailed on that.
Yeah.
And you spent about 4 years driving trucks. 2 years over the road.
On a bet. Yeah. I was sitting around with my friends after I quit this corporate job because I was going to have a heart attack, and my ex-wife had said, we got plenty of money, just figure it out. We're sitting around a fire having too many whiskeys, and I said, hey, what do you guys, they're like, what do you see me doing? What's something that's completely different from my old job? My buddy looks at me, he's like, truck driver. You got the tattoos and you got the Harley, you might as well just drive the truck. And I was like, all right, well, F you, man, I'll do that. And I actually went to school like a month later and drove over the road for about 4, for like over the road 2 years and then another 4 at home. So.
And then the Great Recession hit.
Oh, yeah.
And you headed off, you headed off to Virginia Beach?
Yeah, my parents had moved there about 5 years before that from one of my dad's jobs. And, Chicago hit that recession and everything was falling apart. So we decided to sell the house and try to reboot somewhere else. We'd, been out of work for so long. And so went to Virginia Beach. And
we won't tell the whole story, but you'd been homebrewing for a number of years up to that point.
Yeah.
And by the way, what did you love? What class did you love in high school?
Oh, I was chemistry.
That's so awful. I hated chemistry.
Really?
I hated science. Oh my gosh.
That's what I was going to go to school for, college for, is chemical engineering.
Yeah, but that science background informs your brewing to this day.
Oh, it fed my nerd. It's what the homebrewing was about. Was kind of my outlet.
So you've been homebrewing for a number of years. You moved to Virginia Beach, and that's good.
Yeah.
Where you got your first kind of really 2 jobs at the same time. Professionally brewing.
Yeah.
You had the day job that paid you nothing, $150 a week, as I recall.
That is 100% right. Wow, you remember?
I listened to the podcast today.
Yeah, $150 a week. Yeah.
And then you had your weekend job.
Yeah. Alan Young was an amazing guy who brewed, was a master brewer he'd been brewing for 30 years at that point, at Gordon Biersch. So let me just kind of spend my weekends sponging off of him for the better part of a year and a half. So
talk to me about an Elliott Bay system.
That was actually built in the prison. It was a 4-barrel. It was a giant homebrew system. There was nothing automated. I think the most automated thing we had was it was actually a bucket that had 2 sensors on it and a false bottom. So when you're running off, it would run off slowly and then hit the first sensor. The second sensor would turn the pump on and move it over to the kettle. Oh, it was rough.
But you came across one of those in your travels around Oregon.
I did. I couldn't believe it. So when I got the job out here, I was driving through, and I'd become friends with Tyler Brown. The first week I was here, he was
first week you're out here in Portland from Cleveland.
Yeah,
we'll
when
cover
I was
that.
interviewing for my job. Actually,
Yeah.
It was the very first at the White Owl, the very first Masters of IPA event they put on before Erin Kemplin took it over and started doing it. Maybe she had done it for that. I don't know. Sorry, Erin, if I'm wrong. But just before Ecliptic. So all in the same weekend, I flew out here with my ex-boss, Matt Cole, and I met Mitch Steele. I met Tyler Brown, Ben Edmonds, and there's one other that's escaping me. It might have been Josh Freem.
That's pretty amazing.
All at the same deal, yeah.
And you told him, I'm thinking I'll come out here to be a brewer.
Yeah, I mean, I was out here for my interview with Tom Cook out here with TS. And so got the job while I was here. And then Tyler, when I got back to Cleveland, Tyler had already sent me a welcome to Oregon gift with a bunch of Barley Brown's beers and stickers and a really nice note saying, hey, welcome to the scene, which was super awesome.
And I know we're skipping around if you're listening to the podcast, but we'll go back and fill in the blanks. Hang in there. But since you mentioned it, you moved here. We'll talk about why in a second. But Fathead's Portland, and some of the locals weren't as thrilled with you coming.
Nope.
But the local brewers were incredibly supportive and helpful.
Oh, they were the whole reason that we kind of survived, or even had any kind of. We got the brewer okay out here, but people were very. As appreciating it now, that they were so protective of their own, with the whole writing all these articles about what does Ohio know about beer? Who do they think they are coming out here? Do they even know what IPAs are like? And so it was. The brewers were amazing to us, So we felt comfortable regardless, and then it was just a matter of just go to work and then try to, make beer that would change people's minds.
Okay, now give me again those 4 luminaries that you met your first weekend ever in Portland.
Oh, it was Mitch Steele, Tyler Brown, Ben Edmonds, and I want to say it was Josh Freem.
He would be, if there's a Mount Rushmore, they could all be on it. So now let's talk about the Elliott Bay system you found when you got to Portland.
I'm driving out from Cleveland, and so I told Tyler we were going to swing by, stay for the night in Baker City.
Big metropolis of Baker.
And yes, Tyler Brown is the Pope of Baker City, and
his beer, man. If I can have a pallet jack and a shot of rye IPA, That is just fun. That's what I was drinking the night that I created Portland BLT Week.
Really?
I was sitting at the Paycheck Saloon. I was sitting at the Paycheck or Paymaster. Paymaster.
Yeah.
Yep. Too much dive bar beer, but dive bar lager. I was sitting at the Paymaster, and I was having a pallet jack, and I was having rye whiskey, and said, I think I can do that. And the person said, oh no, you can't do that. And so they went to the bathroom, and I bought the domain.
Really?
And said, I'm doing it. I mean, I'm kind of ornery that way. Tell me I can't do something.
That's awesome.
But anyways, okay. So
we got to Baker City, and I got the hotel and told him I was heading over, and I met him at the production facility, which is directly across the street from the pub where he started, and walk into that system, and I was blown away. I'm like, that's an Elliott-based system. He goes, how do you know that? I'm like, well, I brewed on the exact same system size. I go, where's the bucket with the 2 sensors? He goes, it's over there. I'm like, this is what So walking in and seeing that, it was pretty awesome.
So Chicago.
Yep.
You're good. Virginia City.
Yeah.
You have 2 jobs: the crappy job and the okay job.
Yep.
You're brewing professionally.
Yep.
And before we leave Virginia City, when I'm traveling around, I was doing a podcast with someone in Bozeman. I love Bozeman. Go there about once a year. I've done a number of podcasts. Great brewing scene out there. And I'm talking to this guy, and he says, "Hey, you're in Portland. Do you know Michael Hunsaker?" And I go, "Of course I do." And he says, "Oh, you got to tell him. You got to tell him I said hi." I said, "How do you know him?" "Oh, Virginia City." I said, "Well, I'm going to do a follow-up podcast with him." Like, oh my gosh, it took longer than I thought to get here. He said, "Well, you got to tell him I said hi." So Greg Papp, Polar Brewing, says hello.
That's awesome. Greg's, I met Greg when I was brewing for what was called Beach Brewing at the time there, and he had moved out. I think he was brewing for either Mother Earth before that or Lagunitas. I know he worked for both, and he had just moved into town in to open up to be the first brewer at Smartmouth in Norfolk, and so so we became friends. I helped him pull out all the valve seats on that Brewhouse. It was a disaster at first, and we became friends. Breaking our knuckles open together, hanging out.
So things came to an end. People can go listen to podcasts for that story, but they came to an end at Virginia Beach, and you decide it's time. You're going to move, and you decide you want to go work for Fatheads. So you had met Matt Cole previously, and you called him up. Yeah,
I met Matt the first year I moved down, before I even had my professional. Actually, right as I got it, or right around the same time I got my first gig in Virginia Beach. I had driven back because I had tickets to the Great Taste of the Midwest, which is still one of my favorite beer festivals ever. And I met them. I think I want to say that was their first year they were there too. And I met Matt and hung out with him. And he said, "Hey, why don't you come down?" And he goes, "You're driving back to Virginia Beach?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, which way are you going, north or south?" And I said, "I'll just come through." He goes, "Come through Cleveland, stay for the night. We'll hang out, we'll drink beer." And we did. We drank a lot of beer, and got to know Matt, and awesome guy, and drank his beer, and I was just, it's one of those beers that kind of go, I want to brew like that guy. He makes Belgian beers, he makes lagers, he makes IPAs that are out of this world. And so I went down to Virginia Beach, and 2 years later, when that ended at Virginia in Beach Brewing, I called up Matt and said, I want out of here. I wasn't a big Virginia Beach fan. It was hot and humid.
Yep.
He's like, "You come to Cleveland?" And I said, "I'll move to Cleveland. I just want to work for you. I want to work for Fatheads." And he's like,
"Why? Why did you want to work for Fatheads?"
Like I just said, he just I wanted to learn how to make IPA like he did. I wanted to learn how to make lagers and the Belgians. It was one of the first true multifaceted breweries I'd ever been to that did a wide range of styles and did them exceptionally well. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to brew like that.
That's brilliant of you. So you said, what did he say when you said, "I want to come work for you"?
He was kind of taken back. Like, I would just, and he's like, "Listen, I don't really have anything here yet." I said, "I know. I made some phone calls, and I know that you have some fermenters on the way, and you just opened up your production facility, and I'll do whatever I need to do to get in. Just put me in the cellar Brewhouse when the time comes." And he's like, "All right, well, talk to Chris Altmont, who is my production manager." Well, and it turned out that the gentleman that Alan Young, who I'd been working on the weekends with for 2 years, had hired Chris at Gordon Biersch years before. He'd also hired, if people know him, Jason Oliver, who was the brewmaster at Devil's Backbone. And so I drove 9 hours. I get to Chris's office. He looks at me and he says, "I'll be right with you." I'm like, "Cool." I said, I hear we have a mutual friend." And he goes, "Who's that?" And I said, "Alan Young." He puts his pen down, stops, and looks at me and goes, "How do you know Alan?" I said, "Well, I've been, working on his, just helping out on the weekends while I brewed Monday through Friday here, and then the weekends he'd let me, learn from him there." And he goes, "Alan let you work on his equipment?" I said, "Yeah." And he just looks up and goes, "Well, you're hired." I'm like, "Oh, come on, man. I just drove 9 hours. This is, it's got to be longer than this." So, that started it right there. And I moved up there. They hired me. I always remember it. They hired me on 12/12/12. And I moved up to Cleveland a week and a half later. I was there right before the end of the year.
And you started brewing right away.
No, I started on the no. I told Matt I would work on that Maheen, the bottling line until they got those fermenters in, and 3 months later when they rolled in, they kept their word and put me in the cellar and then on the Brewhouse. So,
but it's funny. I teach people different principles important to me. One, for people who want to have achievement in their life, is the universe is pulling for you, and the universe responds. You step out, the universe responds. The universe is pulling for you, and how cool that all you have to do is mention Alan Young and you get the job.
Yeah, right.
And the other thing I teach is pay the price, live the dream, and you're willing to pay the price. Just come do work on the bottling line until things open up. And so many people wouldn't humble themselves and wouldn't do that. Yeah.
Oh, I wanted in. I knew this was one of those places that I wanted to work. And so, I was willing to do whatever I had to do just to get my foot in the door.
So a couple years there, and then still don't know exactly how it came about, but it doesn't really matter. Tom Cook's going to have a locally owned, Portland-owned, Fatheads Portland.
Yep.
And you get the gig to move out here and do that with him.
Yeah.
And things went great there. And then that came to an end, and he's done an amazing job out at Von Ebert.
Fantastic. Yeah, it was sad to see Fatheads go just because all the work we put into doing it, but I understand the story behind it, which doesn't matter. But I understand why.
Yep.
But starting a new brewery is not easy, and rebranding and redoing everything else, bringing in new brewers. I mean, I'd been gone for a year by the time that happened, I think, or about 6 months.
But they're doing great.
And they're killing it. Great job. Sam is just doing an amazing job making just outstanding beers coming out of there. So it's good to see that place, just rolling.
So Grains of Wrath. So when did you guys? So you have Grains of Wrath Camas and Grains of Wrath Portland.
Yeah.
Camas was first. What year did Grains of Wrath Camas open?
We opened up in March 7th, 2018.
And when did you start messing around with this space before you opened, roughly?
Oh, almost a year. It was a year.
Yeah, a year of work.
A year of work. We had gotten that. I think we had gotten it in November of 17. No, I'm sorry, 16. And roughly we got the keys, and it took about a year just to get things lined up. And then, off to the races once that happened, but it took a long time.
Yeah, you did a lot of work getting things lined up, getting the building space, getting all kinds of things. And most people don't know how long it takes. So from November of 16 all the way through November of 17, that's a year. And then you get to March 18, that's almost a year and a half.
Yeah.
That's like a year and 5 months.
I didn't leave Fatheads until we got in the building in November, but Tom was nice enough to let me stay on for a few months. So I stayed on through, I want to say February or March of that previous year of 17, and then left to go.
And then an interesting thing you did for roughly that year that you were working at Grains of Wrath, but not brewing beer here because you weren't yet open, is you had a really interesting marketing approach that I thought was phenomenal.
Thanks.
You went all over the country doing amazing collaborations.
Yeah, it started out actually, we're like, all right, we got to keep the momentum going. Our name, or at least the brewing side of things, like keeping my name out there, because we had worked really hard in building that with Fatheads, And after talking to you about building my brand alongside Fatheads, you are 1,000% right.
It's so funny to hear you say that you want to keep your name out there.
Well, yeah. Well, you know what I mean, within reason.
I understand. Because if anyone listens to this podcast, like Camas, he's truly humble. Michael does not like the spotlight, but he's learned to appreciate the value of having a brand, that it pays.
Yeah. And so I wanted to keep the Grains of Wrath name out there, or at least start building some momentum. So the first brewery that reached out and said, hey, why don't we get your name out there going, was one of my friends at El Segundo Brewing in LA, or in El Segundo, California, which is outside of LA. And I was like, all right, we'll do that. And then I saw the value. I'm like, you know what? And then it wasn't even just the basic fact of me reaching out for things. I had so many brewers reach out to me, and that's what kind of spoke volumes of what we were doing and how wonderful our industry is they said, hey, yeah, we know you have time. Why don't you come brew? Come brew. We'll get your name out there. We'll do all the things that we have to do, and just keep, and hit it on Instagram and all those things, and we did, and it was awesome. It was fantastic. I think we did about 10 or 12.
And you promoted them. You promoted them on social media, which was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we had done. Yeah, I mean, and it was everywhere from Seattle to Portland to LA to San Diego. We were everywhere. And then it had, and it was great. People were very, very kind.
So March 2018, this place opens.
Yeah.
I remember being here for the grand opening or the pre-grand opening. How did it feel? I mean, all those years, and you kind of not only you now have your own brewery that you're the head brewer at, but you have ownership in the brewery. What did that feel like?
It was amazing. It was great. It's also terrifying, because you know that your name's on the line. As far as, all right, well, put up or shut up as far as the product, and you want to come out as good as you can on a new system. And I think we did that. It wasn't perfect, but we were so much further ahead of where we expected to be as far as the quality of the product coming out of the gate. And it really it was very inspiring that some of the beers we were serving at first, I was actually looking people in the eye, we're a lot closer than we expected to be.
Yeah, the beers are amazing, and incredible food. You've always had, from day one, you've always had great food here. Yep. I love the food, great lunch, dinner, whatever.
I think that's part of the experience. You want to make sure, and that's something that even like I had told my partner Brendan, and he went out to Chicago with me to go to Three Floyds. I said, check out the vibe, check out the beer, and the food's awesome. And so that was kind of how we just got the ball rolling. It's like, you got to have great food to go with great beer, because there's too many places that it's one or the other. Yeah. The beers is barely acceptable, and then the food's good, or the beer's really good and the food is, So it's only a few people have really nailed it that way.
So Portland, when did you open Grains of Wrath Portland?
Was that October?
Of 2020. You realize that we're in the midst of a pandemic, and you opened a brewery in the midst of a pandemic.
Yeah, we signed that paperwork in February of 2020. So
before there was a pandemic. Before we knew about it, at least.
Yeah. So a lot of that got pushed off, or just waiting for the space, because we had to, our landlord had to drag all of the old equipment because it was for those who don't know, it was the old Lompoc spot, the sidebar and the brewery, and that system had been in need of replacement for a while. It was just old.
Yeah, things run their course.
Yeah, so it had run its course.
So when things are all settled down and this pandemic gets behind us, you'll have food there too?
We are going to be. It's a lot different than here. So it's a smaller space. It's 21 and over. We do have food. It's minimal. We're gonna have but we have these really great sausages, several different types of sausages and vegan options and all. But it's a very small menu, because we're not trying to be a restaurant. Yep. We have enough there to so we can have.
And Lompoc had a restaurant on the corner.
They had the
brewery behind,
and
sidebar, and you just have sidebar in the brewery.
Right.
Yep.
And so we're doing very little on the food side, just enough to have to make everybody happy as far as food, be able to have liquor, because in the spot we're at, there are so many amazing food options.
Yep.
We don't need to be, in competition with them.
Yep. You've been to MF Tasty Food Cart?
Man, that food is so good.
He is amazing. I love him so much.
And across the street, Eam.
Yep.
And then down the street, Life of Pie and People's Pig, and I'll miss People XLB, but and people can bring food into our place. So it's not like you don't have to just get food from us. You can have food delivered or brought or bring food into our space. That's fine with us. We don't care.
Nice.
It's support others, you know.
And what kind of system do you have here at Camas?
It's a JV Northwest 10-barrel, 3-vessel steam system, and 10 20-barrel fermenters, 10 20-barrel bright tanks, or serving tanks.
And what's the system out in Portland?
The new system is a Portland Kettleworks system. It's a 15-barrel with 4 30-barrel fermenters and a bright tank for packaging. So, we're just, and because of the second shutdown, we really didn't brew much at all here or there. So we're just starting to get that system kind of,
dialed in.
Yeah. It was kind of, here it was fairly quick. I had familiar equipment. I built it similar to what we had at Fathead, just for familiarity and just people I worked with there. And so we brewed and got these 10 tanks filled in like 6 days. And so we brewed straight through 2 a day, and you can dial the system in fairly quickly with repetition. This we were brewing like once. We would do 2 brews, and then we'd have off for 3 weeks. And so it wasn't, so now we're really starting to get our stride on being able to dial this system in. So, and the beer that's come out of it so far, I'm pretty excited about, for in a completely different system, a different size, Yeah, good. Happy.
Hats off. I think I love the growth you guys.
It's a stressful situation when you start trying to dial in a new system because people are expecting the quality that you're making out of the original spot.
Yeah.
And so you better be really close.
Yeah, and people understand the importance. You have to calibrate a new system. But you
can't put that on the can. They don't know that. They don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
They assume it's probably coming from here because most people didn't even know we were open until recently. So it was that little deal. So.
Well, I got to say, every time I look at your Instagram account, not the Grains Rathens account, but the Michael Hunsaker Instagram account.
Yeah, I need to work on that.
I'm so proud of you when I crack up.
I still need to work on it and do more. It's hard.
You do great, man. You do for your journey and who you are. Hats off. I think it's phenomenal.
It's very little.
Because when I met you, man, you were trapped pouring beer at Collabo Fest.
Oh, we were.
And you did not.
That was the first Collabo Fest, wasn't it?
Yeah, and you did not like me. And I thought there was something, because I kept bugging you. On social media, you're doing this, you're doing that. And you're like, I could just tell, will this MFer just go away? I'm trying to pour beer here.
Here's the thing. I actually took what you said to heart, obviously.
At the end, what got you is, at the time I was bugging about Twitter. Now I don't Twitter. Twitter's madness right now.
Right.
That's what Joe Rogan says, and I go with that. But Instagram, that's same deal. Promote yourself. And I said, well, don't you ever want to own your own brewery someday? And your eyes lit up. You got it then. Then you finally got what I've been bothering you about for a half hour.
And you said, I remember the words exactly. You said, build your brand alongside Fatheads. Fatheads is going to get real popular. And so you want to take your people with you when you move on to your next project. And your new fans will follow you. And you were 1,000% right. I actually went and did it because I remember you walked up. You go, "What's your Twitter handle?" I'm like, I don't do that.
Yeah, I don't do social media.
I'm old,
and you do. You're great now. With your Instagram is great. I love it.
I'm working on it.
I give you all A's, man. 5 stars. So just warms my heart when I see that, and just hats off to all the success you've had.
Thank you.
There's a lot more coming. All right, so let's talk about some of the beers. I do want to talk about some of the beers. So recently you had something pretty cool happen, Built for Speed.
Yeah, who knew? I did. So, in all honesty, Fatheads in Cleveland never made any beers that we did out here that were mine or, just that were Portland exclusive beers. And I was, that was always kind of a little thing that kind of stuck in my craw a little bit. Like, wait a minute, we had I won first and second place in IPA challenge, that 72 IPA with Semper Fi. They never made Semper Fi out there. Even when I won a gold medal for my rye Maibach, they never made that. And it was one of those little, all right, I'm not going to say anything to them, and I just kind of let it go. But when I had the opportunity, because I had so many people ask me about Built for Speed, which was my beer that I had at Fatheads, and they said, when are you going to make that? And I said, well, I don't know. I waited about 1.5 years, 2 years to make it. 2 years, almost. And I asked Tom at Von Ebert if he had any qualms about me making the exact same recipe and calling it the exact same name, as more of a thumbing my nose at those who refuse to recognize us out here. And in a good way. It was never, malicious. And so I made it, and people went nuts. And I was like, oh, all right, well, I guess we got a core, or a beer we can make again. So we made it a couple more times and then sent it into GABF this year, and it won a gold medal for American Strong Pale Ale. So
how did that feel, man? I know you guys were in here watching. Fun. You were watching.
Yeah, I didn't know they had that set up, which is kind of cool because that's the most raw reaction. We had won a couple medals the last 2 years we were open. We won lager medals, and I'm very proud of that, don't get me wrong. But hop forward medals or hop medals, IPAs, are a big thing, especially with my crew that I hang out with. All the guys that I know, Tyler Brown, Ben Edmonds, all these guys have won medals at GABF in IPA and other, hoppy medals. And even Jeremy Tofty at Melvin bust my chops all the time about not winning one, and it's definitely starting to wear on me after a while. So that was just kind of finally a little just, yep, you're there. You're amongst these folks here.
And so you mentioned it was authentic. They were filming that here you were at Grains of Wrath here in Camas.
Yeah, watching a little GoPro.
You're watching on TV the live, Zoom whatever, live feed.
Yep.
And they're filming you. And for people want to, they can go to Grains of Wrath Instagram and they can watch this actual video.
Yeah.
But if someone, what happened? What did you do?
I just remember. I remember going. They announced the bronze medal, and it went to Mai Tai from Alvarado Street, which won silver last year, and then it went to. And then the silver went to Comrades Superpower, which won gold last year. And I'm like, well. And then, all I remember is staring at the TV, and he goes, and the gold medal, and I'm like, say Built for Speed, please, God, just throw me one nugget. And he says Built for Speed. And yeah, I jumped up, and it was good. It was a real reaction. So I've actually watched that once or twice. Like, that's because I love that part of it, it was just raw. Yep. It was fun. And then my phone blows up, with all those guys and everything else. So
it's just phenomenal. I love that story. I love that victory. Okay. And Built for Speed's kind of become one of your flagships.
Yeah.
More often than not, it'll be on tap here in Camas and in Portland.
Yeah, best we can. Yep. It's
people drink it a lot.
Yeah, people drink it a lot. That and just the 3 core IPAs we have are Built for Speed, Dystopia, which has been a beer for a long time, and EGA, which is Eagle Globe and Anchor, which is kind of my homage to my old man.
We'll get to those. We'll get to those. But I want to first go into the one I'm drinking, Daibar Lager.
Yeah.
I love this beer, and part of the reason I love this beer, Tomas in the early days of Culmination, I forget what it was called, but he had some fun name like Blue Ribbon Beer or something, and he said he got one of the best compliments he ever gotten on a beer because this kind of crotchety old guy came in and said, "Man, you finally brewed a beer that tastes like beer."
I can see an old man thinking that.
And for Tomas, that was like a big compliment,
Sure.
In all the great ways, this is a beer that tastes like beer. And I love double IPAs. I love what I call Christmas beers, but I also love a beer that tastes like beer. And I love dive bars. So when you can call a dive bar lager and make it taste like beer,
yeah. we need to, yeah. And we've been having calls from places like, hey, we'd love to have that on a regular basis.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I'm one of, I love dive bars. I have Portland Dive Bars website.
Yeah.
And whenever I go somewhere, I go to dive bars. When I was in, before, COVID sent me home, I was in Greece for a wine writer's trip. And in the evenings, I'd go out to places. And I said, hey, is there a dive bar around here? And she said that the host spoke English. She said, you mean like that you swim under too?
That's perfect.
I said, no, it's a place that's old and it smells bad and it's got tape on the seat. She says, yes, we have one of those. And she goes, but only the locals go. Tourists don't go there. I said, that's why I want to go.
That's the one.
So, man, I went there. Long story, but I didn't get there till 2 a.m. and she's still waiting to take me there when I get back from the winery at 2 a.m.
Oh, my God.
Dinner's supposed to be at 6. It's Greece. They service dinners at 10:48.
Yeah.
Get back to room at 2. I get there at 2. The guy stays open for us. He puts these little potatoes in the fire, and every night for closing time, and if you're at closing time, you get a piece of the potato with the special seasoning on it.
Oh.
It was a great dive bar, and this would be that. So many great dive bars I've been to. And to me, this is just a perfect dive bar beer, I got to tell you.
Thanks. We actually, we worked at it harder than you think as far as like,
I believe it.
It's a simple profile, but it's also when you have to make relatable to when you say dive bar, you better come with something that actually has a very domestic flavor to it.
And you get this with a shot, at least here in Camas.
Yeah, and in Portland, you get it's $9. You get a 16-ounce can of Dive Bar, and any of our our well whiskey is Buffalo Trace. So
that's a good deal. That's a good deal right there.
That's a good deal, yeah.
Okay, Dystopia.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about that. That
beer. So it was not originally a core beer. We had a different beer called Overkill, which we still make once in a while. That's a big favorite as well. But
yeah, I do love me some Overkill.
Yeah, Overkill's great. We're going to brew that next week in Portland. But the main thing with that is it had Galaxy hops, which I can't get enough of to sustain to be a core. Just too hard to come by, too expensive. So I said, all right, well, I got a lot of what I call the Holy Trinity, which is Simcoe, Citra, Mosaic. And I said, all right, let's just brew this. And the Washington Beer Awards are the submissions are in a month. So we brewed it. We sent that off just to get some feedback on it, and it won gold in IPA. And so we were like, all right, well, guess we're pretty close on that one. So that one became a core easily. EGA has been a core since the beginning, and that's been...
well, I'll get to EGA in a second. Two more before we get to EGA.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
All right.
Sorry.
So this isn't really a beer, but I love... My favorite all-time beer festival is Holiday Ale Fest.
Okay. Yeah.
I call them Christmas beers. Bourbon barrel aged, 12%, chocolatey, roasty, and then there's all kinds of variations.
Sure.
And you have, every time around Christmas time, winter time, you have amazing what I call Christmas beers. Your Hail Santa's always good. There's every so often you come out, usually around the holidays, usually when it's colder outside, this gin barrel aged thing that is incredible. I love those and they change every so often, but I always can count on a 10, 12% gem from you.
Yeah, those are fun because it's that time of year, and why not hurt people?
But not everybody can do that. I mean, it's crazy to me because we'll get to a beer you have in just a second that's crazy. Okay. You have the Dive Bar Lager, it's great. You've got IPAs are great, and then you do that style really well. It's impressive.
Thanks, appreciate that. Yeah, we just had a new one come out.
And a new kind of Christmassy beer.
I wouldn't call it Christmassy, but a new mixed culture big beer that you're talking about. Yes. It's called Ancient Rites. It's a Belgian Golden Strong that we aged in Archery Summit Pinot Noir and Acacia barrels for a year on champagne mangoes and Brett.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot going on. It's really cool. I like it a lot. It's
okay. I'm gonna have to come get a pour of that one. That one sounds incredible.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a neat beer. It's a lot going on in it.
And so, speaking of another great beer you have that people may overlook, Paper Maker's Pale.
That is one of our best-selling beers, and not only because we're in Camas and they are the Paper Makers. But
a fierce high school mascot, the Paper Makers.
The Paper Maker, yeah. I don't even. I won't even try to remember what the actual mascot is, but yeah, it's my homage to the mill. I mean, that's what built this town. So I thought that was something that was deserving. When you come in someplace, you pay homage to
what came before.
The area you're in, yeah. So did that, but it's also been one of our biggest sellers in Portland.
Well, people love a good pale, kind of like you said. It's a palate cleanser.
Yeah, and and we make a pretty good hoppy one, and it's like you said, it's balanced. It's not quite as off balance as like an IPA would be in different ways. But yeah, that's been one of our top sellers since the beginning.
Yeah, that's good, and that's impressed me. You pull off a good pale, pull off good, Ancient Rite.
Yeah, you're right.
Wow. Okay, beers like that, you pull off good IPAs, good lagers. That's impressive.
Thanks.
Okay, EGA. It's a beer that's near and dear to my heart. Now, what's the EGA stand for? Tell us the EGA story.
Sure. It's Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. So it's the Marine Corps symbol. So my old man was a Marine. So once a Marine, always a Marine. So you get raised by that. He was also a DI. So he was in Vietnam he did his tour in Vietnam, and then he was also a drill instructor. So you live a certain code. Even though he got out when I was a kid. I was real young, and but still that kind of sticks with you. So it was my homage to him. He was my dad. He pushed me to get better, and there were no 8th place trophies back then, and it was like if you didn't win, you got go get better, go work harder. So yeah, that's my tips I got to the old man.
And I don't want to bring up a tough subject, but you lost him recently. When did he pass?
Just 2 years ago. 3 days after Christmas, 2 years ago. So yeah, and then mom went like 9 months after he went. So it was 2019. I thought was the bad year because I lost them both like in 2019, and then 2020 comes around. It's like, oh, hold my drink.
How cool is it that they got to see this place open?
Yeah, it's pretty great. Oh,
I'm sure they were. I'm sure they were so proud of you.
They were, and I made sure to let them know the reason this place is open was because of them. They floated me in the tough times, so they got me to that spot.
Yep. So Eagle, Globe, Anchor.
Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. That's it.
I love that beer. I love that beer by itself, but I love the story. I know what it's like to lose people close to you, and it just I love those kind of great stories.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's why my dad's hat hangs behind the bar still. It'll always sit there.
That's phenomenal.
It's a reminder.
And where's the medal hang?
They're out there. They hang right. Actually, it's right there, right above the hat.
I'm going to get a picture of that. So there'll be an article that goes with the podcast.
Oh, cool!
And I'll get pictures of those.
Yeah, they're all there. The ones we've won since we opened up. So I think we've only entered a few things. We've entered GABF every year. We entered Washington Beer Awards every year, and then last year we entered Best of Craft.
So it's 15 that you moved out to Portland area, to the Northwest?
14. Yeah, August 14.
So you've, it's been 5 years. This will be, no, this was been 6 years, coming up to be on 7.
Yeah, crazy.
So do you miss Cleveland winners or Chicago winners?
No. That's why I don't go back in the winter. I'll go back and visit, but no. I love it out here. How do you not love it out here?
So the Northwest feels like home.
Yeah. Oh, this is home now. I mean, it's mild. It's easy going here. It's not, I miss certain times. I'll miss like the pace. If that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah.
Just the pace of life of,
Yep.
Sometimes, but it's actually a little more chill out here. So it's probably going to help me live an extra year. I might make it to 55.
You better.
Yeah, so it's been good. I love it out here. It's outstanding. Plus, what I do for a living is there's no better place to be.
Yeah. Well, the fact that you've become your own luminary in the craft beer world here in Portland. There's a lot of amazing brewers that are just world class.
Yeah.
And the fact that in my head you're on par with them.
Thank you.
Hats off to you.
Appreciate that.
I don't say that lightly. I mean, there's a lot of good brewers here, but there's not too many that are just top notch.
Thank you.
And you're one of those top shelf brewers.
I appreciate that.
So
thanks.
It's been a joy to have you on the Craft Beer Podcast. I love your story.
Thanks
I've been a fan for a
having me again.
I've been a fan for a long time.
Yeah, you've been around since the beginning.
Yeah, that first time I met you, Clubhouse, I just knew it was something. There was a spark. I'm pretty intuitive, and I can tell, man, this guy's gonna make it.
Thanks. So. Yeah, I'm glad you felt that way because it seems to have worked out.
Excellent. Well, I wish you all the best, and we'll have to catch up again on the podcast in a couple years. And congrats on having a Portland brewery. That's pretty cool too.
I'm stoked. That's my real professional home. Because where I kind of made my name.
Yep.
And so being back over on that side is, now we get to enter the Oregon Beer Awards.
That's right.
Yeah, we do. So yeah, it's pretty fun.
Good.
Yeah, it's a good time.
All right, Michael. Wish you all the best. Cheers.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.